Hello, everyone. Welcome. We're going to give everybody a minute to get comfortable. We're letting some more people in. I'm so glad you can join us today. If you would take a minute and introduce yourselves in the chat, I would love to know where you're calling in from today. And if you want to share what genre you're writing as well, that would be great to know. And, so many of us are writing mishmash genres these days. And so if your genre feels a little bit complicated, we'd love to read about that too. So introduce yourselves in the chat and we will get started in just a minute. Hello from Houston, Epic Fantasy. Excellent, Robin. Excellent. Great to have you here. Connecticut, Tennessee, Seattle. Welcome. Excellent. All right. Well, we will get started. I hope you'll continue to introduce yourself. I am not going to be keeping a super close eye on the chat right now because I am the kind of person I can do one thing at a time. So I'm going to have my eyes on you all, but I will be reading your chat afterwards. So please share freely. I look forward to learning more about you. It is so great that you're here. Um, there will be a replay after this workshop, and I'm going to just go over some housekeeping details. There will be a replay, and I will be sending that out soon, but I do encourage you to stay if you can, because at the end of our conversation, we'll have a chance for a Q&A, and we will also, I have a special gift for you and also some special opportunities, so I hope you can stay. And I will just tell you a little bit about myself if we haven't met before. My name is Rebecca. I'm a certified book coach and developmental editor, and I'm host of Self-Editing Essentials, which is a group coaching program for fiction and memoir writers who have finished or almost finished writing their books and are ready to learn the art of self-editing. And probably more importantly, more interestingly, I am a writer too. I am right there in the trenches with you. I write flash fiction, I write some nonfiction, and I'm currently working on a novel, which is exactly the kind of genre mishmash that I was just talking about a minute ago. I guess it's upmarket fiction with a dash of magical realism. So I absolutely positively understand what it feels like to be working on revision, coming up with all these ideas, going through all the hard work. So we are in this together. So if you are currently in the process of revising your books, I would love to see in the chat some of the challenges that you face doing the revision work, or maybe you haven't even started doing revision yet, but you are getting closer to it, and that maybe there's an aspect of it that you are especially dreading. I would love to just see in the chat um, what folks are working on. Fifth draft of edits. Yeah, I hear you, Wendy. I think I'm on my fifth draft as well. Getting the foundation beats in order. Good, Priscilla. Yep. Connective tissue. I love that. Yes. Timeline, pacing, just knowing where to start. Probably the most common feeling, Marissa. Working on your first draft. Excellent. Editing all the time. Fiddling, not fixing. Yes. Fiddling, not fixing. I feel like that could be the name of this workshop. I'm gonna write that down. That was really good. Structural concerns, good. So these are great comments. And this is what I hear all the time as a book coach and editor, and it's what I see all the time when I am um, when I'm working on a developmental edit with a client. And I think what the root cause of that is that writers are trying to solve revision problems without any kind of diagnostic framework. So just think about that. You have been working for many, many months or years even on your novel or your memoir. And we're talking about both today, just to be clear, that this is very much for memoir writers as well. Imagine you're given 200, 300 pages to fix without any kind of rule book, without any kind of diagnostic framework. This is an almost impossible task when you think about what you're asking yourself. And for that reason, we have all kinds of questions like the ones that are coming up in the chat right now that can really make revision lonely, frustrating, and it can cause us to stall. So today, my goal is to if nothing else happens today, my hope is that you leave here feeling like you have a diagnostic system, a framework that you can use to sort of think about revisions in a way that feels organized and efficient and really gets the work done. So today what we're going to talk about all kinds of things. I hope you have a notebook and a pen and some kind of yummy drink. But we're going to start by talking about why writers get trapped in endless revision. That most of us have been in this cycle at some point. We're going to talk about the revision framework that I use with fiction and memoir writers and that I use myself for my own work. So every single thing that I'm going to talk about with you today, I have tested first on myself. I am my own guinea pig. So we will be talking about those systems. We're going to be talking specifically about how to break our revision work into distinct layers. Instead of trying to do everything all at once, we're going to look at this process in parts. And I'm going to talk about a process to identify and address real problems in your manuscript. And best of all, this is the part I'm looking forward to most, is we are going to be hearing from some of my favorite writers who are members of my group coaching program and who are currently revising manuscripts and who have spent many long hours thinking about exactly the kinds of issues that you have brought up in the chat just now. And they're going to be talking about some of the insights that they have gleaned along the way on revising their manuscripts. And then finally, we will do a Q&A session. So hold your questions. Like I said, I won't be looking at the chat right now, but please hold on to those questions and I will absolutely try to answer them afterward. And I'm going to talk a little bit about self-editing essentials at the end of this. And this is my group coaching program that walks writers through the revision process. So let's talk first about why writers get stuck in revision. I'm wondering if you can relate to any of these patterns. Have you ever felt overwhelmed by your manuscript as a whole with no idea where to begin? Well, I already know the answer. I saw it in the chat. Yes, of course. There were people who mentioned this. I have been there as well. There can be a tendency to rewrite the same scenes or sentences over and over and over again, neglecting deeper structural issues. And I think this is what I see the most when I'm working with a writer, when a writer comes to me for the first time, talking about the fact that they've been editing a book for a year and it only took 6 months to write the thing, right? It's because we're going over the same problems over and over without getting to the heart of the issue. There's that feeling of constantly guessing our editorial decisions. Am I even correcting the right thing? That can be very exhausting. Receiving contradictory feedback can also be very challenging. If we don't have a framework that we are using to guide our revision process, then any feedback we get can be very disorienting if it doesn't immediately resonate, because we don't know if that writer is simply having a subjective opinion, which is legitimate and interesting, but not necessarily relevant for what your goals are. Or is that feedback actually very objective and steeped in some good understanding of story architecture? So that can be very disorienting if you're not really sure what the goal is. And finally, losing confidence and steam midway through revision. Revision is lonely work if you don't have a writing community, somebody in your life who understands what you are tackling. And so these are some of the reasons that writers get stuck in revision. And I am wondering if any of you can relate to any of this. Let us know in the chat. So I think the reason that this happens the most often, we kind of touched upon this already, is that when we start to think about revision problems, we are actually what we want to be thinking about instead of symptoms is the root cause of the problem. So let's imagine you just got your manuscript back from a beta reader, and that beta reader read your work really carefully. They gave you very thoughtful feedback, but it's vague. They named symptoms, the middle drags. Well, what on earth do you do with that? That just feels like a really huge problem. Do you go and rewrite your whole middle, the whole middle section of your novel? I've seen lots of writers do that. But if we understand the possible root cause, the solution might be a lot simpler. It may simply be that several of your scenes in the middle of the story are missing escalation. In other words, you don't need a new scene. You don't need to get rid of the scene. You simply need to ramp up the escalation. Another example, somebody tells you, well, the pacing feels a little bit off. Again, that's very ambiguous. That's a symptom. The root cause may be that the scene is weak. It doesn't have a purpose. We don't know what the goal of your protagonist is in that particular scene. And it can make it feel like the pacing of your entire book is off. We can start to have these really big concerns, but when in actuality, when we pinpoint that root cause, we can understand that the solution is easier than we thought. Sometimes an ending isn't landing. And I will see this a lot where writers tinker with their ending, with that last chapter, over and over again, trying completely radically different endings, when actually the problem is that story promises that you established in chapter 3 or 4, far back in your story, haven't been resolved somehow. So the problem isn't that the ending is unsatisfying. It's that we haven't fulfilled the promise to the reader to resolve certain premises that you developed earlier on. So do you see where I'm going with this? That understanding the root cause of whatever feedback you're getting or feeling is really the key to efficient editing. We also have when readers are losing their interest, and you think, why? This character is so fascinating. This character does all kinds of amazing things. How can people be bored? That is often something more subtle. For example, a character's agency is unclear. We don't understand what they want, or we don't understand why they can't get it. We're not getting into that really deeper level of understanding with a character. So fixing that can suddenly make your story much more interesting. And finally, the prose feels flat. And this is where I'll see writers overcorrecting their prose, trying to make it more and more beautiful, more and more polished, when the problem isn't that the words are ugly or boring. The problem is maybe some missing emotional specificity, meaning we these words are gorgeous, but what the heck do they mean? They're not making me feel anything. We need more pinpointed emotion. So this is just an example of many of the possible root causes that could be giving you that kind of symptom that feels troublesome when you're doing your revision work. But as you become more and more familiar with the system, in terms of what each of your scenes needs to contain, it becomes much, much easier to identify root causes. So when we think about revision, I like to work with writers and have them think about revision similar to the way a developmental editor thinks about revision. And many of us think about revision in terms of having layers. And the way I think about the layers of your manuscript are macro, micro, and granular. Macro, when we address your story at a macro level, we are thinking about your book's structure, its arc, its escalation, subplot movement, pacing, kind of all that big high-end stuff. And this is a place we start, because if we don't have these kinds of foundational pieces in place, we're gonna stall out. Nothing else is going to stick. Then we think about micro revision, which includes scene construction, point of view, dialogue, tension, transitions, voice, all that really fun stuff that starts to get more specific, more scene by scene. Then we have granular revisions, which is line by line decisions, compression, rhythm, clarity, precision. And we're going to talk about what all of this means later in this conversation. But these are the layers that we can think about our revision work incorporating. And finally, as we are working through these different layers, we need to have certain sustainable revision practices in place. Proper mindset. I mean, you all know, just even if you have gotten as far as having a finished draft, you know how important mindset is to get yourself to the desk every day and do the hard work. We need ways to ensure that we'll have momentum day after day. We often like to have accountability from someone in our life to make sure we show up. Workflow, understanding our own workflow. When do we work best? What are the different tasks that we need to accomplish each day? Having a good understanding of that is a very sustainable practice. And finally, community support. So we're going to think about the whole revision process as these different large parts that eventually come together to give you an entire polished story. So when I am talking about thinking about revision from a macro level, and I'm working with someone, I like to start them out with a reverse outline. And we do reversed outlines in my group coaching program. It's sort of the foundation of the entire program. And I will tell you, as a reformed uh, pantser, I'm kind of consider myself a plantser now. It's a combination of a plotter and a pantser. But I have been, for you pantsers out there, I have been in your shoes and I have shuddered at the thought of outlining anything to do with my story for years and years. But this outline, even if you are the pantsiest pantser out there, this kind of outline may work for you. It may not feel as restrictive as other kinds of outlining. I see it do tremendous work for a lot of writers. The idea is a reverse outline helps you break down your completed manuscript scene by scene. So this is an outline you are writing after you have finished the book instead of before. And you're using it to analyze your story's structural issues and to ensure that every single scene in your story has a purpose. The benefits of reverse outlining are they help you track your story's momentum. It helps you identify where subplots, characters, and themes need more development. And it ensures that every scene is contributing in a meaningful way to the plot. And so this all becomes important because of the when we were just talking about symptoms and understanding root causes, your reverse outline is a fantastic place to find your root causes. So let me show you, I'm going to give you an example of what a reverse outline would look like. You are essentially going through your entire manuscript and you are going scene by scene and blocking it. You are summarizing a scene and blocking it on a page like this. Ultimately, when I'm working with folks in my group coaching program, I'm looking for an outline that's maybe 8 to 12 pages long. We want to really extract the essence. We want to wind up with a very, very shortened version of your manuscript, something that's very manageable and easy to dive into back and forth. Eventually, sometimes your reverse outline will expand, it will get larger, but at first, you're really looking to keep it under 12 pages. So in this example, this comes from a memoir by Tara Westover. You may be familiar with Educated, fantastic memoir. And in it, on the first paragraph, what's being identified here, we have, okay, this first chapter is, or rather, the first scene is written in the first person POV. It includes dad and mom and siblings, grandparents. It takes place in the author's home. And we have childhood memories that are being revisited, and it's done in the form of flashback. Okay, so why are these notes important? If you are writing a book where POV changes here and there, that is a really important thing to track. If you have more than one narrator, for example, and you're going to be playing with that POV, it can be easy to think you're remembering everything, that everything is crystal clear in your mind. But what we start to find sometimes when we do a reverse outline such as this is that maybe the POV is not being scattered in as strategically a way as you hoped. It's not being distributed as evenly as you hoped. So tracking POV in a reverse outline can be really helpful. Also, tracking what characters appear in each scene is really helpful. If you are writing a story about two brothers, let's say, and one brother, you think they're getting equal playtime, but all of a sudden you write your reverse outline and find that is not the case, that there's a very uneven distribution. That can be a really key issue that shows up primarily in a reverse outline with much more ease than if you're trying to read the entire book. Flashback scenes. I love them. They're great. They get a bad rap sometimes. You can do incredible things with flashback, but you cannot do incredible things with flashback over and over and over again. So when you're using a literary element such as flashback, it can be helpful to track that in a reverse outline so we make sure we're not using it too much. So these are some of the features that you might put in your first, that you might want to track in your reverse outline. Then we have a summation of that scene. The narrator is introducing key family members and some of their controversial beliefs. The grandparents tell Tara they're pulling her out of her home and she's going to live with them so that she can attend school. So there is a very, very summarized version of her first scene. And then you may want to add some notes. Be sure to go back and XYZ. Sometimes as you're working on your reverse outline, you're more sensitive to things that may be missing or may be pulled out. And you can make a note of that so you can remember to go back to it. So go to that afterwards. Let's stop this. So now I would like to introduce you to the wonderful Wendy Lynn Harris. Wendy is there she is. Wendy is in my group coaching program, and she is going to talk to us a little bit about her experience working with a reverse outline, so that maybe you can understand why I just sing the praises of this technique so much. Um, I just want to make sure that, here we go. So I want to start by just encouraging you to check out Wendy's book. Wendy is the author. I know everything gets all backwards on Zoom, but so I will read you the title. It's Writing and Selling Short Stories and Personal Essays. This is a fantastic book. You can see I've got lots of book darts in it. I refer to it. If this is your wheelhouse, please check it out. Again, it's Wendy Lynn Harris. And
Thank you.
Wendy is a writer, obviously, and she writes short stories, flash fiction, personal essays, which have been published in magazines like the Literary Review, the Sunlight Press, and 34th Parallel, among others. And yes, I love the hearts, Lori, right on. She deserves them. She is a fantastic writer, and she's just an all-around cool person. So to introduce Wendy, or to introduce herself, I have invited Wendy to go ahead and share her log line. For those of you who are unfamiliar with what a log line is, this is essentially one or two sentences that, oh, and believe me, this is maybe harder than writing a book. It's really hard, but it is,
That's an
you speak
understatement.
from experience, right? But it's one or two sentences that gives us a synopsis. You can almost think about it as your elevator pitch, the thing you say to someone ever so quickly who doesn't have a lot of time. Here's my book in a nutshell. Here's everything that you need to know. In order to start a conversation with me about my book. And I encourage writers to develop a log line kind of early in the process, because just like that reverse outline, having a very summarized version of your story that you can speak about and think about in an abridged way will give you a whole new understanding of your story. And it will also enable you to talk about your story with other people. And the more we talk about the stories, the more we learn about our stories. So if you haven't written a log line yet, go for it, do it. It's a worthwhile exercise. So with that said, Wendy, can you share your
Okay.
log line with us?
Here's the latest that I'm working on. I'm calling it She Thugs, and the log line goes like this. When a glamorous and treacherous girl gang takes over her apartment building, a lonely ex-soldier trained by her militant father must teach a group of conventional women to survive and hopefully escape before the pending war of the sexes tears their city apart.
Oh, nailed it.
Now,
Nailed it.
that took months, I feel like,
And
just
Wendy's a
because
really prolific author. Like she's got a lot going on, but it's
they're
challenging. How does it
hard.
feel to have that? How does that change
It feels
things?
fantastic. This particular project was on my desk before the pandemic and then came up again more recently. And I never, okay, it's because it's just us writers here. In my pitch before, never mentioned that the gang takes over her apartment building. I honestly was still playing in the backstory of it. Like she's this girl and this is what's wrong. She's worried about this. And um, I never really nailed it down. And so, because I have been doing this level of editing, I actually get what the story is about. And I didn't before. There's a reason why it wasn't ready, why it didn't sell before, and why it's back on my desk. So, thank you for the challenge.
Fantastic. And I imagine that that will really inform you as you start to think about querying too, and or
For sure.
going back and looking at the query letter. Yeah,
And
yeah.
also comp titles and different things like that, where I'm kind of listening now when I see back of page books and other pitches of published works. I'm kind of looking
Hmm.
for the comparison a little bit more clearly.
Gotcha. Gotcha. Oh, that's good to hear. All right, everybody. Challenge, challenge, do
Let's do
it.
it.
All right. So, Wendy, you are in my group coaching program, and we have so much fun geeking out about story structure. I could talk story structure with you all day. It's so fun. And I have admired so much of the work that you've done in our group, but particularly the way that you have approached your macro edits. You have really used the reverse outline in an impressive way. And I would love to hear, how did the reverse outline change the way that you look at your story?
That's such a great question. I love that you softened how panicked I was when we first met because I was feeling like I should be able to revise a novel. I have been revising my short story work and my essay work for years. Is it just that it's more pages? And why can't the same techniques extrapolate into this length? And when we first connected, I said, I just don't get it. I don't get why I can't seem to get where I want to go with these stories. There's got to be tools that I don't know about that have to do with novel work and things like that. Do you have some? And you said, yes, these. I said, oh my gosh, I haven't tried any of this before. And the reverse outline is the piece that really made me go, oh, I see it. I do something kind of similar in short story and essay, but you don't have to be this granular because you can hold it all in your head. And it's not a synopsis. Great tool. It has its place. A summary, great tool. It has its place. But the reverse outline gives me, it's the first time I ever took my entire 350 pages and said, what really happens and what's exactly happening in the plot and also to this main character through the whole story. And so I completely biffed it like the first time I did it. And I got really like, I don't know what I'm doing because I saw so many problems in the beginning. And you said,
Mhm.
just make as many notes as you want to off to the side, but give yourself the truth. You're only recording what is actually on the page so that you can find things later that you know you want to fix. This will give you a really nice, concise guide. So I muscled down and did it, and it really wasn't that hard once I said, okay, I'm not fixing anything. I'm just recording. And it was really revelatory, especially because I got through the whole book without trying to make any changes. Every time I go into the actual manuscript, I see the debris of sentences that need to be fixed and other things happening that it would be easy. I know it's low-hanging fruit. Like, oh, if I fix that, I'll feel good about my writing session. But I didn't make the book better. So with this reverse outline, I had something for the first time where I could just observe without judgment. This is what's on the page now, not what it will be later or it was in the early draft. This is the truth today. And so for the first time, I could just observe the storytelling and say, okay, where I feel like something is off. Now I can actually just look. And with this particular book, it was kind of clear right away that my character's arc and the plot arc were not equal in excitement and they didn't match up well. If you know what I'm saying, I'm sure somebody out there is also nodding their head
Oh,
going,
yes.
that's my problem too. Like I felt like the plot
Right.
worked. It is an exciting story, but the character didn't change for a while and then she changed a lot right away and then she stayed like that for a while and I'm like, that's off. So I'm also kind of a visual person, so I took it a little further and made note cards of here's the plot and here's her interior arc and here's how they show up right now. And then I made a giant mess and moved them around and said, well, if the plot was all in place and the interior was all in place, here's what it would look like. And then matched it back up.
Wow.
And I
Wow.
was thinking, oh, this is the worst experiment ever because I'm going to have a lot of work to do. But it actually was great because I was able to say, all right, so it's just interiority that has to move. Yeah, I'm going to make myself a little clutter, but if it's in place, this is where it's supposed to be. I have to get it there eventually. It gave me a chance to go back. I know exactly where everything is in the manuscript. So here's her interior moment. It's in the wrong chapter. I'm going to grab it and move it and grab it and move it. And it was really an easy experiment to do on paper. I could do that within the new version of my reverse outline without ever touching the manuscript. I wasn't making a mess. I wasn't worried about ruining what I'd already done because it was just in this. I think mine was short. I did like a 5-page version, this
Right.
reverse outline. I was very concise about it. Um,
Mhm.
so here it is. Here's kind of the version. And, Rebecca so smartly said, so you can revise it again along your process anytime you feel like it no longer serves your story. If there is something else that you feel, you can always go back to this without ever touching your manuscript. You're never going to ruin something. Play with it here, move your pieces. And I said, oh, I don't really want to do that. I would like to make all the right decisions first because as much as I love this story, I'm sick of writing this story. I would like to have written this story. So I'm just going to go with my first ideas. And so I started this revision in November and I've changed it twice. Of course, I've updated it because that's what the work reveals. And the most
Yes.
recent one was this month, and I'll just tell you briefly why. Um, Everything seemed to be in the right place. And I'm actually at the point now with this book where I'm reading the manuscript out loud to my dog and my cat, like just listening, right? So we're in the later stage editing. And there's just this one scene that I really like, and I know it's important to the book, and I think it's flashy and it has a lot. And I put it in place in the first half of the book on purpose because I feel like the writer needed some of this information as a hint so you can enjoy the second half of the book. And for a long time, I was like, that's the right thing. But I am going to have to massage this particular scene quite a bit to make it fit. So, as the evolution of this revision has happened, it became clearer and clearer that this just stood out in a way that wasn't making sense. And I had to stop and just go, all right, well, I keep revising it. Maybe I don't need it at all. Maybe I don't need it here. It was even in the way of the midpoint. It felt like too flashy, too close to the midpoint. Like, what am I even doing? So I just experimented on my reverse outline. What if I moved into the second half of the book?
Mm,
How does that
mm.
change? Actually, didn't change anything in the first half of the book. Nothing emotionally changes. The plot stays the same, caused no problems. And in the second half of the book, plugging it in solved a problem that I was going to have to figure out later.
Oh,
So it
interesting,
always belonged over
interesting.
here, but it took the nuance of editing this project before I could actually have a new decision that I feel good about. So
Right.
that's how
So,
it happened.
so I'm going to ask you a question that I did not prepare you for. I'm going
Oh,
to
okay.
scrap those other questions. But what I'm thinking as I hear you talk, these are major, major changes.
Yeah, yeah,
And
yeah.
that is, I think, and tell me in the chat if some of you agree, that thinking about making those big changes in your own manuscript is a little scary. But doing it in the reverse outline, I'm curious, did you feel braver? Because it
Oh,
wasn't the same kind of
yes, I
commitment.
had full permission to be creative again, which
Right.
showed up when I went back into that draft. Um,
Yeah.
because the first draft that I was really working on was story structure. Is the story structure in place? That's kind of one of the first things that you take your reverse outline and then, go to work on. And I just had such clarity. I'm like, well, what if I could just play around with it, think about it in the shower, think about it when I'm walking my dog, and I'm not making any changes yet. Like I'm not making any commitment that is causing rewrites in scenes, chapters, entrance, exits, bridge work, like all that kind of stuff. I didn't break anything. I was just
Mhm.
reimagining again. And it gave me back a chance to be creative without fear of causing myself more harm.
Right. So I'm seeing here folks are a little bit overwhelmed hearing all of this. And
Ah,
I get it. I get it. See, Wendy's on the other
what?
side, right? Wendy's already done it. So
Yes.
she it's much simpler when you sit down with your own story and really think about pulling out essentially what we're doing is we are pulling out scene by scene a summary of each scene, and we're just looking at them all together instead of trying to read our whole book, right? We're looking at our entire book basically boiled down to 8 to 12 pages. That's it. And when we see the really raw form of our story, that's when we can start to make these observations that Wendy is describing of this doesn't need to be here. This is too much. I didn't explain this. And instead of going into your book and making those changes, you're making them on your reverse outline. And if they stink, if those ideas you came up with, oh, that wasn't the solution, Who cares? It's a matter of simply making a small tweak on a short outline, as opposed to going into your book and trying to fix everything there. So I hope that's a little bit, does that make it a little less scary? Does that clarify? Give me a
I hope
thumbs
nobody
up in
finds
the.
it so much easier, I think, than anything I was trying before. And
Mhm.
when you're just looking at one thing at a time, like just looking at what is that plot arc based on it was just the truth. I was just printing out the truth of what's there. Um, I had so much more clarity. Like, this is the only thing
Yeah,
I'm going to look at today. And so I
yeah.
was very clear about it. And also, I kind of had some new wind behind me. I was like, I can feel successful today. I really studied that and I have made some new decisions that I feel good about. And now I get to move on to the next thing. And I'm so excited because it actually like helped me already revise one book. Rebecca and I have been together over a year, and I brought three novels with me, and one of them is already out to agents and is, on a full request. And this one will be out, hopefully, I think maybe this fall. And then I've got a third one, and I'm sticking with it. I mean, this is
You
how
are
I
sticking
try to
with it.
crack
You
the
are.
code uh, into being able to actually finish a book. I love having written that one.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I thank you so much, Wendy. That is so exciting. And I'm seeing lots of questions, and believe me, everyone who has come to the group has had these same questions. It's a big topic. It's I could talk about it all day, these reverse outlines, but once you dig in and do your own, it is once you understand it fully, it is very clear how much more efficient and how much easier it makes your process. So thank you so much, Wendy. I
Thank
appreciate
you.
your comments there. So helpful. So the key takeaways here about your reverse outline is that writers often revise reactively until you understand your structure. So, oh, this is boring. I'm going to make it exciting. That doesn't usually work well for us until we understand, because of our understanding of structure, what the problem is. Reverse outlining, and this is really the most important thing that a reverse outline does, is it takes all these details that are in our head and in that giant awkward manuscript, and it externalizes them. It puts them in one small document that you can digest with ease. It gives you a framework that will reduce that emotional overwhelm, and it really just helps us dig into what our structure is doing. What is my scene doing? What is changing here? What pressure is escalating or not escalating, as is often the case? What story thread is moving? And what can I remove without losing anything? So that is an example of one of the things, just one of many tools that I like to share at the macro level of revision. Next, I want to talk about micro revision, and this is really scene level. So this is where we get into this really fun stuff like POV control, dialogue, voice, flashback management, narrative distance, and subtext, all that really fun stuff. And so what we're going to do now, stop the share here. We are going to talk to Hillary now. And Hillary is another member of C. Hillary is a writer and a yoga and a meditation teacher. She writes gorgeous, gorgeous prose. And what I really love about Hillary, among many other things, is she likes the same books I like. And so one day I just want to go. She's always traveling to amazing places. And I want to travel with Hillary and just talk about all our favorite writers. So just so you know, Hillary, make a note.
It's on my list.
Okay. So Hillary, will you go ahead and share your log line with us, please?
Of course. Let me pull it up here. Okay. I don't have a title for but I won't even share the working title, but we're getting there. This is the
Absolutely.
log line. A guarded young American, a guarded young American travels to the Italian countryside to find the father she believes abandoned her. But as she uncovers her mother's hidden past, she must decide whether this clandestine journey was worth betraying the one person who has always stood by her.
Beautiful. Beautiful. Well done. Excellent. All right. So, Hillary, one of the things I really admire about your work, and I've said this to you before, is just the way that you experiment so thoughtfully. I think sometimes when we get into the revision stage, we kind of imagine that, okay, now it's time to do I did the fun part. I imagined the story, and now I got to just grin and bear it and just get through this last slog. And Hillary understands that revision is all part of the art. And it's actually my favorite part of the art. It's where you've got your story in place now. You know what your book is about, or you think you do at least. Revision might unearth some new mystery, some new themes, but it is a wonderful place to play. And Hillary is forever playing with point of view and flashback and different kinds of voice and dialogue in really intentional ways. And I want to encourage you to do the same, not to think of revision as a place where it's time to get serious and get really ruthless with your words. It is still a place for exploration, particularly when we are in this micro level. Again, when we are looking no longer at this enormous structure and trying to understand all that scaffolding. Now we're in it, we're in these scenes, and we're using that same reverse outline to track the different kinds of techniques that we're using. So, Hillary, you play with all of these literary elements in such a gorgeous way, and you are not afraid to start over from scratch. Like you are just, it's amazing. And I am curious how understanding how looking at revision in smaller parts, in other words, not sitting down to look at your entire novel at once, but looking at it in these macro and micro ways, how it's made it easier, if it's made it easier for you to revise in this playful way and really experiment the way you do.
That is a really great question. And you're right, Rebecca. I think that it's the fun part of the micro revision for me is that it does bring back the creative aspects of
Yeah.
writing.
Hmm.
Um, I have my background, well, I always wanted to do fiction writing when I was young. And then for decades, I ended up being a medical writer, super structured, not not what I ever thought was in my wheelhouse. And then I did some travel journalism, which invited in a little bit of creativity again, but was still pretty structured. Um, and I think what was hard for me wasn't figuring out the structure of the book per se at the beginning as I was pantsing my way through the first draft of the novel more trying to invite all that voice back in that wasn't really allowed in the kinds of writing that I used to do professionally. So over the course of doing the micro revisions, I've been able to add in a lot more of what I think is the fun stuff. It's the artistry of the writing, the artistry of the book that really helps a reader get into the character's head and into their body and really feel like you're stepping into the scene so that you can use all of the sensorial um, words in the writing to let people feel like they're stepping into the scene. Um, Also, I don't think you know this, Rebecca, but my minor in college was film studies. And when I used
Oh,
to
that
edit
makes
short
sense.
films, yeah, when I used to edit short films, they were silent, but you had to be really precise about how to pair things up and where you wanted to move a person from one scene into the next scene, or how you wanted to develop that scene so that it made sense and that it was cohesive and clear and emotional and all of the things that you want from a novel. And so all of that precision has been really fun to work with in the micro editing part of this novel. And I just
Mm.
feel like, when I look back at the earliest drafts, to me, I'm like shaking my head, like, I can't believe that I thought this was good enough because I'm at the point now where I've learned so much and I've added in so much texture and so many different layers to the story that it feels like I kind of never want it to end, but I really do.
Right, right, right. Absolutely. Well, I'm glad you still feel that way. That's a good sign.
It's
And that's
really
so,
fun. This is the fun part.
yeah. Oh, thank you so much, Hillary. I really appreciate that perspective. And I hope this infuses a little bit of fun in everyone's editing process, because it really is. Thank you for that. And do you think that understanding structure has made it easier to play confidently? Do you feel like that has changed your approach to play at all?
It's funny, I
Oh,
remember our meeting and we were first talking about my joining this group. And I told you, oh, I have the structure down. I have my story in place. And you said, oh, that's great. Then you can start working with the little details. I will confess that I have changed the structure numerous times since that day. So I understand the structure. It doesn't mean that I haven't like torn down the building and started from scratch again and done like an entire gut remodel because I have. But yes, I do. I think that it has been helpful. It has definitely been helpful to understand how to do that because it allows for me to play around with, I guess, different architecture in the story. And then I have more energy or more space to play around with the more nitpicky, you know, uh, more creative pieces of the wording. I love line editing. My problem, I know I saw in the chat earlier, some people were saying working on the rough draft and editing as you go along. Um, I force myself not to do that, but I'm guilty of it because I love picking the right words. I love picking, the right descriptors. And so at the line editing portion of revising the whole novel, I think that's really fun, just getting to bring all of those more particular, precise pieces of revision into the story.
oh, for sure, for sure. It's really the reward, isn't it? It's when we
It
get to do
is,
that. Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Oh, thank you so much, Hillary.
of
It is so fun
course.
to hear about your process. I appreciate you.
You're welcome.
So I think Hillary has demonstrated well that micro level revision, scene level revision really changes everything because instead of needing to fix the whole book, we can start to really look at each scene and analyze what is this specific scene accomplishing emotionally. We can ask things like whose perspective creates the strongest tension? What information should be withheld? Where does the energy shift? Imagine asking these same questions about your entire novel. We would just go bananas trying to answer those questions and apply them to an entire novel or memoir. Instead, really digging into each individual scene and asking these questions is how we start to get a story that loses its kind of saggy middle where nothing happens. This is how we make sure we're breathing life into our stories. So Hillary gave us a great segue into our next discussion point, which is granular revision, that deep decision making, which we usually think about as line editing. And I think, and let me know in the chat if I'm right about this, but I would suspect that most of us start here. That we start in line editing for exactly the reasons that Hillary explained or suggested is that it is so gratifying. We are writers, we love words, and it is so gratifying to make those words sound beautiful. Um, when I'm going through my own work and I see words that I know are clunky and there's no cadence to them, leaving them like that and having faith that I can come back is sort of similar to walking through my kitchen and leaving cupboard doors open. It's wrong, right? You don't leave your drawers open. You put that stuff away, right? And I think that line editing and not doing it right away can make us feel really uncomfortable. Unfortunately, most of us start there when really that's the last place most of us should spend our time. And that's because, as you heard from Wendy, so much changes at the macro level for most of us. And so much play, like Hillary talked about, happens along the way. If our words are too polished, if our words are too beautiful too early on, we're not going to want to let go of them. And so it becomes a little bit more difficult, it becomes a lot more difficult to do meaningful revision work when we love our words that we've worked so hard to choose. And so that's why I urge writers not to spend too much time at that granular level until they've really got the story the way it's meant to be. With that said, sometimes it's a nice little reward at the end of the day. If you have a scene that you really worked on hard and you know you love it, go ahead, polish, have some fun. But also be thinking about um, postponing this. till the end. So what happens at the granular level? This is where we work on something called compression. Compression is reducing the amount of space something takes on the page while preserving or increasing its impact. So what I mean by that, some people overwrite and some people underwrite in early drafts. And that sounds really judgy. It's not. That's a neutral. Some people like to just get their ideas on the pages. Some people want to get and just kind of move forward. Some people want to get all their ideas plus some extra and make sure they're kind of capturing all the nuance and all the essence of their imagination, and they're willing to trim afterward. Adding things to our story. If you are an underwriter, I tend to find adding scenes works better at that macro and micro level. If you are an overwriter, here's where you're going to start to focus on compression. And that is, how do I eliminate some of these scenes, figure out what can go without compromising the integrity of my story? So that's happening at this level sometimes. That might mean taking a moment where you're doing a lot of showing and do some telling instead. Oftentimes when we go back, if we're overwriters, we realize, oh, summary would have worked well here. And this becomes really important because no matter what genre you are writing, there are word count expectations, and they will vary depending on the genre you're writing. But word count management is something we want to keep in mind. Even if we're self-publishing, it's a way to take care of the reader and ensure that they're getting what they expect. Rhythm, precision, sentence level intentionality, how specific are your sentences? Do they make sense? Do they make the point that you're hoping to make? So before I introduce Kathy, who is going to talk about line leveling, I just want to show you this picture of the great Kathy Gao, because this to me just typifies how hard she and the other writers I work with work. I just love this picture. This is Kathy the night after a very, very long night of writing to meet a special deadline. And at last she accomplished it. But look at all those notes. Look at all those pages of wonderful prose. So I just thought that was a great introduction to our next guest. So Kathy, welcome. So Kathy is, I want to make sure I get her link here. Um, so Kathy, perseverance is just one of her many writerly superpowers, but Kathy really shows up. She is an amazing writer with an amazing imagination, enough ideas to write an entire series. She's really fun to work with. And she has just begun a new Substack newsletter that we're going to drop the link in the chat for that. Please check it out. It's called, oh, how could I forget? It is called Harder Than It Looks, right? And I got that right. Harder Than It Looks. And it just traces the highs and lows of the writerly life, plus some other observations. She also does a wonderful audio component of it as well that I enjoy. So please check that out if you get a chance. And do we have that link, guys? If you could stick that in there. If it doesn't make its way in, we'll get it in there in a bit. So Kathy, Kathy, go ahead and share your log line first.
So my log line changes a little bit about every week or so. So I don't have it memorized yet. I'm going to read it. When a friendless 16-year-old on the planet Lasvard learns the real reasons his parents were executed as enemies of the state, his actions unwittingly put him, the rebellion, and the only family he has left in mortal danger.
Excellent, Kathy. Excellent. Thank you so much. I don't know how Kathy did this, because Kathy is, and again, this is not good or bad, but Kathy is the epitome of an overwriter in the sense of so many ideas, and also just her genre is very complicated, lots of world building. And so to boil that down and get that into a single log line, I need lots of stars, lots of applauses, like all the things that you can make. Yes. Really good, Kathy. Thank you. So you are writing, I think that your work and the process that you are going through in revision right now is a really good example of how an understanding of structure can really influence the writing that you do and the revision that you do at a line level edit stage. Um, you are writing a super complicated story in a very complicated world for a young audience. You are YA, your novel is for YA audience. So you have had to, what was your original word count?
Like 250,000 words.
Okay, so Kathy has ideas. And so you are trying to get that down to about what?
Ideally 100,000 words, but maybe
Okay.
120,000 words,
Yep.
somewhere in there.
Great. Yep. So you're working on streamlining scenes and decreasing word count intentionally. And I am curious to know, how did your understanding, your evolving understanding of structure impact? I think when we think about structure, we think about how it impacts what Wendy and Hillary just spoke about. But it also, and again, this is why we do line editing ideally at the end, understanding structure also impacts at the line level. How did your understanding of structure evolve and it ultimately impact where you felt comfortable trimming and yeah, streamlining some of your work?
So I'm going to backtrack just a little bit
Mhm.
on that question.
Sure.
So since I started with such a high word count, because I had dual timelines and I added a second timeline along the way and everything, but that was really too high a word count, even for my genre of science fiction and for young adult. So in looking at the macro level, and I think Wendy, you mentioned you might have done some of this as well. I realized that my two protagonists, one of them had become a lot more exciting and had a lot more intense backstory and trauma and everything than the other one. And so I was really excited to write about this one. And this one just now seemed like it was maybe in a different book. So I needed to cut, like 100,000 words. And so I ended up cutting out the whole original timeline and the main character and the set of characters that went with her. And it was very painful, but I think it was the right solution. And that was from looking at the macro level, what needed to be done. Jump later to the granular level, I've been cutting all along the way. Each level there have been, trimming and cutting. But I would say at the granular level, there are so many aspects and ways that you can cut. But I think two for me that really I felt like made the most difference were one, the idea of trusting the reader's intelligence and not spelling everything out. I think my original inclination, because I always want to know all the answers, is to like let them know, well, the reader needs to know this, that they need to know it up front, otherwise they're going to be confused. But by the time I got to the end of the book and then went back and did the reverse outline, I was like, no, the reader doesn't need to know this now. They may not need to know it at all, but maybe they need to know it later. Um, and in being able to then give, say, bits of backstory, or it might be a flashback or something, um, and give it at a time when the plot generated it, it allowed me to use so many less words to describe the thing, and it made more sense. Um, so that was really helpful to kind of realize that I could do that. And I'll just say for anyone who's sci-fi fans out there, if you've seen the Netflix series Andor, my my husband and I just finished watching it for the third time last night, and they do a fabulous job of weaving backstory and flashback into the story at like just the right moment where it has the most emotional impact and in little snippets. So I would recommend that. Um,
Excellent.
the other area that I felt like I really used a lot at the granular level was in working with dialogue. Um, so I love writing dialogue, and so I have had some scenes that were just like the whole thing was dialogue, and my husband, as my beta reader, was like, he asked the question. He said, "Can you have too much dialogue?" And right away, I knew, of course, that I did. And yes, you can't have too much dialogue, but uh, so you need to have a balancing of showing and telling and having telling the story and not having the whole thing happen through dialogue. but also trimming the dialogue and making sure that, as you were mentioning, Rebecca, of using more specific words, maybe more descriptive words, so that you can shorten what needs to be said and also you want to make the language sound natural, but no filler. And by using those specific words and changing things, that often allowed me to just then get rid of a whole sentence or two that was later on that wasn't really necessary if I was very specific with the thing that I was actually saying. Um, so I felt like, I also tried to ensure that the dialogue is doing multiple things. So not only moving along the plot and giving you the characterization that you want for your character, but also setting the tone, maybe ramping up the tension. You want your dialogue to do a bunch of things. And so working with that at the granular level also helped, and it also can make it shorter. So um, I think those were two of the many ways that I also have been trimming and cutting and tightening the prose.
Yeah, that's great advice, great suggestions there, Kathy. And I want to ask you one other question. You have done hard work, including, brace yourselves, you guys. I can't believe she did this. She had to change her protagonist's name after all. And I mean, yeah. So you have really challenged yourself and you have done some really radical revision. And I would love to, if you could give a few pointers in terms of how you manage to stay engaged with this process when at times it is so hard. And are there certain practices that you have leaned into to not walk away when you're feeling it?
I think there's like two things that have helped me the most. And I am probably the least organized and kind of schedule oriented person of our whole SEE group. Um, but one of them is kind of having goals and deadlines, and the more concrete, the better. And if they're not just ones that I make myself, and so they can easily be thrown out the window when some glittery thing goes by. So that involves smaller goals. For instance, like I'm going to be reading some of my pages for a scene in one of our C Zoom calls, and going to be getting critique from the rest of the group. I know that I have to prepare that and work on that. That's easy goal. To the bigger goals, like participating in that contest. It was called Rev Pit, where you submit a query letter and a synopsis and your full manuscript. And so I had stayed up all night the night before to get it in for the noon deadline. And that's when you saw me lying on my yoga mat in my office. It wasn't really a staged shot. That's like I just lay on the floor, and then my husband said, oh, geez, let's take a picture of this. But the other thing that has been equally, if not more important for me, has been community. The writing in the SEE community, and having knowing, both having the motivation of the accountability of everyone else, and knowing that other people are working on their scenes and writing and sitting down at their desk, as well as sharing all the lows. I mean, sharing the highs is great too, but you really want someone there sharing the lows with you. And we've all had them and gone through them, and shared what some of those things are. And typically, we're not going through them all at the same time. So there's always like a bunch of people saying, "I was feeling that way last week, and now things are better." You just have to sit down and kind of work through it. This is part of the process, and that's been hugely helpful for me. And also, the last thing is, like, for instance, starting the Substack, which I did, I think, at the end of February. That has been surprisingly helpful in helping me to just um, understand some of my writing better, because again, the act of writing about it and thinking about it more thoughtfully has helped me understand some things about my story, and about my process. So, all of those things.
Great, excellent, great practices. Thank you so much, Kathy. I appreciate it. And finally, I want you to meet Lucia. Lucia is a memoirist in our group. So we've talked to a bunch of novelists, but we also do memoir. And Lucia is a social worker and an amazing member of C who has such an important story to tell. We've been working together for a while now. And before C, we did one-on-one coaching. And I've never told you this, Lucia, but we had a discovery call where, Lucia is deciding whether we're going to work together or not. And I'm trying to play it cool, but I'm thinking the whole time, oh, I hope she picks me. I hope she picks me because her story is so good. And it begs to be told. I'm going to leave it to her to share her log line. But her story is a fascinating one, and she writes with such precision and descriptive detail about her family that I'm about to ask for if I can have Christmas dinner with you all next year because I'm just like, you have brought these people to life on the page. So Lucia, will you go ahead and share your log line?
Yes. Oh, thank you so much, Rebecca. And it's so exciting to be here and to see everyone's faces and all my fellow writers. Oh, I just love it. Um, and yeah, okay, so Rebecca, I don't know if you know this, but I had interviewed a lot of book coaches and like gone to talk to a lot of them, and they're so good. There's so many good ones out there. But then when I talked to Rebecca, I really felt just your genuineness and your connection to the story, which is why I was so excited to work with you as well. And it hasn't changed this whole time. So with that, I'll share my title and my log line. So my title is I Don't Know Why You're Still Fighting. And what it is, it's the log line is um, when the city's plan to demolish a small shopping complex threatens the livelihoods of dozens of families, I join my father and others in a fight to protect not only our businesses, but the community we built together. So it's a story I've been working on for a long time. It's very close to my heart. Um, yeah, so I can't wait. Really
The
excited
finish
about
line
this.
is in sight, Lucia. It is in sight. Oh, it's wonderful. All right. So I think that Lucia's situation is really instructive for those who are writing memoir and wondering, I think that I know that so many people out there are writing memoir, but it does feel like groups and workshops and so many of the things are really often focused on fiction writing. And I think that's a real shame, personally, because I think that both kinds of writers have a lot to teach each other. I think there's a lot of overlap, and I think there's a lot of information that is unique to each genre that we can glean from each other. And so I would love, Lucia, to hear what it's like for you. How do you, surrounded by all these fiction writers, how do you make that work for you in terms of how has that informed your process?
Oh gosh, I think it's helped so much. It because I think it's so easy just to get into the mindset, well, oh, I just have to present facts. I just have to present what happened. Because to me, the facts are really important, especially with the story that I'm telling. Uh, but so primarily it helped me balance the facts, like stating facts, with telling an interesting story. I think and that's what everyone's trying to do, right? We're all trying to tell an interesting story. We all want to like just tell a story that people want to read and that moves people and that grabs people. So it's the same. We have it's story structure, it's character building, story arc and character build and character arc, right? It's scene structure, it's all the things, right? So to me, it helps so much to get out of my head as just this is just my story. Um, and also, I had been previous to this part of a group too that was doing um, mostly scripts. So that was helpful too. But then this really gets into prose, which was what I really wanted to do, focus on. Um, oh, oh,
That's
took a long time.
that's that's so smart, Lucia. I love what you say about um, as a memoirist, that there is, and I with all the memoirists that I coach, that when they come to the to the page, the first thing they say is, well, I don't want to lie. And it's this, obviously, these are writers with integrity and we want to tell the true story. But there is a way to insert some of that fiction magic, right? And still tell the truth. And I think sometimes, for me, I'm not a memoirist. I'm in such awe of those of you who have this talent. But I imagine that it can be challenging to write about our brothers and our fathers and our husbands and our, whoever's in a way that because these are facts, right? So how do you bring them to life? You may lose touch with some of those things that are colorful that we can see easily in a fictional character. And so I like what you say about the influence that fiction writers have in that way, where you can suddenly realize, oh yeah, I can capture these kinds of details and still tell my true story. I love that. I love that. I hadn't even thought about it quite that way. That's great.
Yeah, and I think part of being in the group was just really helping me with that and helped me think of like how can I tell excuse me, quick one my throat. How
Mm,
can I tell this true story in an interesting way and then include just seeing everyone else develop their characters helped me think about how I was going to develop my characters that like to me I know them really well, but how am I going to tell
right.
interesting things about them?
Yeah, yeah. Excellent. Oh, that's so interesting. So I encourage you, please hang, if you're a memoir writer out there, hang with some fiction writers. They're good people. And vice versa. Really, hang with people who don't write your genre because they are going to have a different set of issues in the revision process. But you're gonna see a lot that are similar actually, but you will also learn from those different kinds of challenges, and it does inform our processes in really interesting ways. So that's great tips, Lucia. And Lucia, in your memoir, you write so eloquently about the power of community and everything that it can achieve. And I'm curious how writing community has changed your writing life or impacts your writing life.
So yes, I am a big believer in community.
Yeah.
Well, first of all, having other literary friends and just like being in the space and having other people that are doing the same thing you're doing. Um, and just like I said, just listening to them, how they talk about structure, how they talk about all those different things, how they're thinking about their stories. I love getting tips on organization, especially around writing. And some of the folks like in the group, they'll talk about what they're doing and like, oh my God, I need to do that. That'll help me so much. So it's that. Also, Kathy talked about this a little bit about staying motivated. Because there's so many times when you're like, oh my God, I'm just so done with this. There's no way I could do it. Like there was a point where I just wanted to take my manuscript that was in the computer. It wasn't printed, but I just wanted to throw it out the window because I just felt so done. And just to have a group of people be like, oh yeah, that's totally feel that way, have felt that way. Um, it makes you not do that, which is helpful because I've been working a long time on this, so I'm glad I didn't do that. Um, so it's things like that. And like Kathy mentioned, just having other people having the same experience that you're having, as well as the really good ones, because it makes you think, oh, that's ahead for me. Or, yes, I also had that. Um, and the feedback is great. I saw someone in the chat say earlier, like, it's really hard to get feedback for me too. But I think like having someone like the people in the group, which I'm a believer, like a leader attracts similar people. And so Rebecca, being the kind person she is, attracted all these other wonderful, amazing, kind human beings. And they're just, it's both gentle and helpful, the feedback. And in, and and it's funny because I was talking to another writer friend and she was in a group and she said, they're too nice. They just keep telling me what I want to hear. And I'm like, well, I don't find that in my group. Yeah, they're telling me some of the things that, some nice things, but they're also telling me uh, kind of what needs a little bit tweaking, what would be nice to have a little bit more of, or maybe what doesn't quite belong in this particular scene. So that's been super helpful for me. Um, Another aspect of that is hearing the feedback that they have for each other. So when someone is sharing their piece and you hear everyone else giving their feedback on that piece, they sometimes share things that I hadn't thought of, which helps, right? Which helps me just continue to think of it. So I think for me, it's made me a better writer.
Absolutely, absolutely. Yeah, I think that the chance to practice giving feedback and to practice hearing feedback, I think is an invaluable gift we give each other. And something that I I really am moved by the writing life. I'm just seeing all the support people have for each other in this channel. Like, all a bunch of strangers here in this Zoom room. We're all together and just the encouraging words people are giving each other is, I think we all come to the writing life to write a book. That's the goal. We have a story that we want to tell. But our books give us so much more than we even give them in the sense that we when we align ourselves with other writers in community, boy, doesn't life just get richer? And I have worked with so many writers who say, when I started this book, the only thing I cared about was getting it published and finishing the darn thing. And now I don't care. I mean, I hope so. And that's definitely a goal. But all of these other things along the way that we learn about ourselves and that we enjoy in others and the community we find, I'm just going to get all kinds of mushy. I'm going to stop now and talk about some more story structure. But I just really do feel that writers are just amazing people. And you are the storytellers you are because of the empathy and the care you show each other and the humor and the grace. And so, yeah, hang out together, y'all, because it's big things happen when that's the case. So thank you so much, Lucia. I really appreciate that. So now what we're going to do is talk a little bit about, in a minute, I am going to share some slides for those of you who want to stick around and learn a little bit about what we do in our group coaching program. I'll answer those questions. I'll show you what it looks like. And then after that, I would love to answer any questions you have about the group or about revision, whatever I can do to help. And finally, I do have a little gift and a special opportunity if you stick around. So we'll get through these last few slides as quickly as we can. And then I would love to just hear what's on your mind. So thank you, C friends. It was just so great to have this chat with you today. All right, let's get back to these slides. Okay. So, whoops. Aw. Okay, so we are going to talk a little bit now about self-editing essentials, and this is a group coaching program for memoir and fiction writers. So we talked a lot about fiction today, but we also take good care of our memoir writers. And I'm going to tell you a little bit about why I started this group. My background is I am a developmental editor and book coach and love that work. But something that was happening a lot was I was seeing writers, I would do as a developmental editor, people would come to me asking for revision help. And what I would see is they were almost ready. Like I could tell in talking to them, these are smart writers, they've got a great story to tell, but they're not quite ready for a developmental edit. I know that this smart, capable, creative person can do more of the work themselves and therefore come and get better, higher quality developmental edits from me after. And it really stinks. I'm not going to lie. It stinks to tell somebody you're not ready for a developmental edit yet. But it is also so empowering to be able to say, you can do this. You can do these revision techniques. And so I wanted to create a framework for writers so that they could not feel like this little guy in the slide here, not feel all alone, kind of in a silo trying to do revision work by themselves, but instead to really learn the principles that I teach and that I use to edit and to do it in good company with others and to have fun along the way and be able to learn tools and techniques that could be repeated over and over again for each new story. You might have heard Wendy mention that she's working on more than one book. And I know she's gone through the modules that I provide more than once to apply them to different stories. And that was what I wanted, something that you could use over and over again. So in my group coaching program, we do exactly what we just talked about. We look at your manuscript at the macro, micro, and granular level. And we do that through a series of modules that break each section into, if you've seen my YouTube channel, you will know kind of what my teaching style is like. I'm a little old school. I love me my slides. So I always have some slides and lots of handouts and kind of all that. If you're a visual learner, my classroom will probably work especially well for you. But we go through we take a deep dive into what is a reverse outline, how does that work, and all the other things that we've been talking about. We dig deep into it one section at a time so that you are looking at your manuscript and really assessing it in a way that's analytical and efficient. And what I see members getting out of this experience, and I want to just backtrack for a second. When I designed this program, my thought was that it would be for writers who had completely finished their manuscript. I'm finding a lot of folks snuck in who hadn't finished their manuscript, and I'm so glad, because it is very worthwhile if your story is basically formed. You have a pretty good idea of what you're doing. If you haven't typed the words at the end just yet, this is still going to be relevant for you. So I'm not sure if I said that before. But what I see members achieve who really go through the modules, who go through the group coaching program, is the ability when they're finished to diagnose structural concerns, revise strategically instead of that endless rewriting. So not rewriting, actually revising, strengthening scenes at the macro and micro level, and managing revision in a way that is far more sustainable and less overwhelming. I see the writers become just stronger instincts about pacing and tension and story movement, and being able, like Kathy was talking about maintaining that momentum during particularly long revision cycles, being able to approach feedback more critically and selectively, and most importantly, most excitingly, is the mastery of a repeatable system that you can use over and over again. Because I know most of you are not going to be finished when this book is finished. There are a lot more stories inside of you. And so having techniques that you can use again and again is a really important part of being a writer. So the way it works is it is a month-to-month program, meaning there's no long commitment. I want to make sure the program is right for you. So the contract is just month to month. And what you get each month are 2 group coaching calls on Zoom. And what we do in those are really so much fun. So the groups are small. I don't have a specific number I cap them at because I really watch for the dynamics in the group. So if we have a group of folks who love to talk and the conversation is really lively, I'm going to cap that group a little bit smaller than maybe a group that is a little bit quieter. And we all have different learning styles, and I'm open to all those styles. So I cap the size accordingly, but it is a high touch small group that you will be in, and you get 2 group calls, and at each of these calls you will always have a chance to talk. We open with a check-in where everybody just where we just check in with each other and see how it's going. Highs and lows are welcome. We also, then one person is invited to share 1,000 words that we critique together that week. You get the pages in advance of the group, so you can read your peers' work. Then we come back and critique. And then finally, there's a Q&A at the end of each session. And we really try to dig pretty deep into the questions that are asked. So you will learn a lot from those sessions, and they're a lot of fun. And also with this program, there's modules that do the macro, micro, and granular level editing. And I'm actually also working on a next level in that classroom where it's going to provide some help on querying and writing synopses and things like that. And I've designed the modules so that they can be completed in 4 months, but very few people leave after 4 months, I'm so happy to say, because there's just always something to learn from each other. So you are absolutely able to accomplish what you need to in the 4 months, but we encourage you to stay as long as it feels like a fit. And finally, the community and connection component of the program involves a couple different things. We do have a Facebook group. That's not that active these days. we can activate it anytime we want. But where things are really happening for seers right now is on our WhatsApp channel. My phone pings all day long. There is so much great, lively conversation going on there. We chit chat about all manner of things. There's lots of craft talk, lots of sharing of resources. Just cheering each other on. One afternoon, we just got together spontaneously and all cleaned our desks together. It was really fun. So that social component is certainly not required. I know some of us just don't have time or bandwidth for all the social components. There is still lots and lots of substance. But if you are looking for writerly community, I don't know a better place for it. So I hope you would check that out. The investment for this is $175 a month. And again, it's just a month-to-month commitment. So it's not too scary there. Um, because I am so thankful for you staying for this very long webinar. It's went over a bit, and I'm so grateful you're still here. I do have an awesome opportunity. The first 3 people to join our community will receive a 1-hour private coaching call with me, and that's a $125 value. And we can use that however you like to use that, to talk about your manuscript, to talk about craft in general, to talk about querying. I mean, really whatever you want to talk about. So the next step is, if this feels like something you want to learn more about, like Lucia said, I am, I like to vet the community really carefully. I'm really protective of my writers and want to make sure that this is the right place for you and that you will thrive in our community. So what I like to do is have a 15-minute discovery call. It's completely free, where we just get together and talk about C and answer your questions and decide if this is the right season for you to be doing this kind of work. So you can get the link in the chat. I think somebody's going to put the link there for that. You can use this QR code, or you can see the link right there on the screen. That will take you to my calendar, and we can schedule a time to chat. It is not a high pressure sales call at all. I want to just answer your questions and make sure it's a good fit for you. And if based on those, so it's really the first 3 discovery calls who commit to joining C. That is who will get those coaching calls, the complimentary coaching calls. And now I want to gift you. Oh, this is the wrong name. I'm not gifting you Write an Excellent Ending. I'm sorry, this is the wrong slide. You're welcome to it. I can share that with you too if you would like it. But what I'm actually giving you is the Write on Track planner and video. There will be a link for that in the chat as well. Please grab this. I designed this for myself and a particular client to make sure that both of us were sitting down at our desks on a regular basis and getting our writing goals accomplished. This is a planner with a lot of flexibility built into it, and a lot of different ways to use it. Inside the planner, there is a link to a video that shows you how I use the planner. And I have mine right here. I print out the pages every week and I just fill it up with all my goals and all my plans in terms of, how I'm going to get this book finished. And I invite you to do the same. Let me know if it works for you. And I know many of my clients have used this and modified it and used it their own way. But it's just another way to keep some accountability there for yourself. So I hope that is a helpful item. And if you have anything that you, oh, and right here, so I am on YouTube, and I would love if you would check that channel out and subscribe if it's of interest to you. Lots and lots of craft videos there. We talk about revision, we talk about starting your story, we talk about all different kinds of things. So that link will be in the chat as well, and you can use the QR code here if that's easier. And finally, if you are miles and miles away from thinking about revision yet, I completely understand, and you've got that to look forward to. I do work with writers at all stages of the writing process. So if you have questions, something that you want to talk about, book a free discovery call with me. We can look at the different ways that I support writers. I do also do one-on-one book coaching, and would be happy to support you if you think that our style is aligned. So thank you so much. I'm going to stop this share here. And wow, I can't believe so many people are still here. Thank you so much, you guys. Wow. And on a Friday, I really appreciate you. We have a few minutes to do some Q&A. So I'm going to just scroll down to the bottom here. And like I said, when there is time, I will read all of your questions. Let's see. So let's stop here. When you read a manuscript for the first time, what are three things that make you think it isn't ready yet? To get an idea of what matters versus what writers obsess with unnecessarily. Mylene, do you mean like if I'm as a developmental editor, if I'm seeing a manuscript, is that okay? So if I'm looking at a development at a manuscript and I'm doing an assessment to see if it's the right time, oftentimes, unless there is a reason for the book to be so long, there are exceptions. I am all about breaking rules. As a writer, you are artists, please break rules all the time. Just understand why you're breaking the rules, right? But if I get a manuscript for someone who is writing middle grade, and it's a 125,000 word middle grade book, I am going to be concerned that there's a lot that could be trimmed, and that it would be a relative. I'm going to be concerned that if it took 125,000 words to tell a middle grade story, that we're either looking at several stories or we're looking at maybe something that hasn't quite matched the lexicon or the requirements for that genre. So I'm going to dig in with that writer and really talk about the structure of a middle grade story or whatever genre it is they're working on, and run through with them sort of some of the key elements of that form. And then I'm going to recommend they join C instead, because they are going to have much more success really figuring out themselves what can go. Because as an editor, if a story is sprawling too much, the writer may not know exactly what their book is about. And it's not my desire to tell you what your story is about, right? This is your story. You are the creator. So I am much more excited to help that writer figure out what their story is about than actually showing them what needs to be cut, right? Versus somebody who's bringing me a story where they can identify my story is about this character wants this is what's in the way, and this is how they're going to finally overcome it, right? If those elements are present, if I can tell by talking to the writer and reading a bit of their manuscript, yeah, they get that those elements need to be here. I'm going to look at this. I'm going to look at the story. Um, I have looked at plenty of manuscripts where the prose isn't there yet. They're not even pretending the prose is there yet. It's a rough draft. Um, that I'm not looking for beautiful language at that stage. This is not a final edit. I'm looking for structure. I'm looking for momentum. I'm looking, for those things to be that'll be able to help them with those kinds of things. Does that answer your question? I hope. Um, okay, let's see. Oh, everybody's so nice. Um, all right. Well, it looks like does anybody have any other questions? So length that affects structure. Yeah, I mean. Okay, so length and effect structure in concept-driven literary fiction. How do you balance abstract ideas with concrete details so readers stay engaged without over explaining? Oh, let's hang out. You just asked like one of my favorite questions. I could talk about this all day. Yes, Annette, there will be a recording shared. Absolutely. Thanks, Elias. Yes, that is a balancing act. Literary fiction is totally my wheelhouse. I love it so much. And when we are writing literary fiction, this is character-driven fiction, right? So we are there, your readers are showing up more to go on an adventure that involves your character's interior life, as opposed to going on a wild bank heist or something, right? There's going to be a lot happening internally. Um, more, and that's where the drama lies, right? In terms of the evolution of your character versus what's happening around them. So what I will often see in a developmental edit, and this is a very appropriate kind of issue to take to a developmental editor. This is like this is higher level stuff that it can be really helpful to get objective eyes looking at. Um, but what we want to do with a character like that is ground them in day to day, or ground them in some kind of concrete setting, right? I'm forever telling people who are writing very plot heavy books, get us inside their head and let us know what they're thinking. And I'm always talking to people who are writing kind of more character driven novels. Where are they sitting right now? What's in their hand? Who called them? Where's the cat? Right? So grounding, so you're kind of doing the opposite in those two situations, grounding your reader in some kind of a physical setting, just so that we're not up here entirely, because that can start to get a little bit confusing and a little bit your reader will feel a little bit unmoored sometimes if we're up here too much. So just simply having them give them a cookie, give them something to do. That can be really, really helpful. Nuances of visualization or environmental sounds. Got it. Yeah, exactly. Exactly. It's a very simple technique. And there are lots of other things we can do too. But I find that that is often a really good way to get started. Well, I want to thank everyone so much. This was so much fun, such a pleasure. Please do keep in touch. I will be reading all of your questions. And in the meantime, reach out to me anytime. You can reach out to me at rebeccapickens.com if you want to email, or you will be getting the link for this soon. So you can always look. And you know what? I don't know if all the links got put in there or not. The chat was going so quickly. So I will make sure you have links to Kathy's Substack and Wendy's book and all that stuff. So that'll be coming in the next few days. So thank you so much, everyone. Thank you, Sea Friends. Have a great weekend, everybody. Happy writing and revising. See ya.